All right. Call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is minutes. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So moved. Seconds. Or you get the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Next item on the agenda is the equity update. Kingsley, whenever you're ready.
Well, I'm going to talk through a couple of things as we're getting set up here. So one of the things that we kind of talked about just with our administrators not too long ago was what this year was all about. And I think a lot of times it was a little bit in my head, and I wanted to make sure that it was kind of talked about from an umbrella standpoint. So a lot of these things happen in the equity plan or codified in the equity plan, but not necessarily kind of the mechanism of what you want to put in place. And so the first thing I want to talk about is just overall, as I went through that first half of my year as I was starting as the equity director, one of the things that Chris, other folks talked about was data points. We need data as far as making sure that we're continuing on with our data-driven analysis or being a data-driven district. And so because of that, this year, again, with thoughts from you, thoughts from teachers, thoughts from administrators, we really want to focus on assessing where we're at, where we have needs, where we have deficiencies. So this next year, we can really look at what we can do moving forward. From this standpoint, the way we've gone about it is, one, in talking with different administrators, two, adding the student voice. I'm sure you've heard students speak up at the mic as well and kind of talk about their experiences and feelings at the district level. And now we kind of want to incorporate and talk about what the equity committee wants the board to kind of work on as we kind of dive into this work, but also the teacher experience, because I think a lot of times what gets left out here has been teacher input. And I think that as we've been talking about the data from a community perspective, the data from a student perspective, at times it has seemed, even though it hasn't been the case, that we are blaming or putting the burden on teachers, and that's not the case. We want to make sure that as we're talking about this, we're assessing their needs, we're saying that we have deficiencies, but we're moving forward on this together. And so that's kind of what the conversation is going to focus on today. One, talking with you as far as asking the questions. The equity committee wants you to ask questions around the different initiatives and different things that you're working on, but two, providing that additional teacher voice as we move forward, and so we can address some of the things that we need to. So I will now pass it on to one of our district partners, Cersei.
Thank you. So, hello. I think you all know, but just for the record, I'm Cersei Stembo with the Creative Corridor Center for Equity. We've been partnering with the district on equity initiatives, which is being sort of defined as we go. One of the things we've been doing is supporting the equity committee. So we've got some equity committee members here, so pleased to have you join us. At some point, we maybe open up for some kind of conversation with the committee.
Who's all on the committee?
Cool. And Chad Simmons is on his way. I'm not sure he knows exactly where to come, so we will hopefully have him soon to join me as well. He's my partner with C3E. So again, we talked with you back in March when we gave the presentation on what the Equity Committee had been doing. Just a quick kind of reminder, and that will set up where we're going to go today. Unpacking the strategic plan was the big major work of the Equity Committee, and how every one of these goals has equity as an implication. So the first goal about reading achievement with an emphasis on the achievement gaps. Second one on math, again with the emphasis on achievement gaps. And then goal 3, which a lot of people really think of as the equity goal. I think they all are equity goals. But goal 3, especially because it's looking at the educational experience of students. So we've been talking about outcomes as both academic outcomes and then also the experiential outcomes. So that's a key piece. And then this is the one that even in the goal started to talk a bit about measures, again with a focus on equitable outcomes. So we've been unpacking that as an equity committee and want to do a little bit of that with you today. We know we don't have a lot of time, so maybe we'll whet your appetite and you'll invite the committee back to do a little bit more. So before we dig into that though, you all have had the opportunity to hear from a lot of students. One of the things the Equity Committee really felt we needed to do to ground this particular session today was to get some student voice in front of you. You had the opportunity at the last board meeting to have several students share with you their experiences around issues of equity in the school. The disproportionate minority contact group, the Georgetown group in town, had a forum right after you got the release of the climate study. There was a public forum and students spoke there. So we felt like actually the student voice is getting, the students are stepping forward and kind of forcing us to hear them. And so we as a committee didn't necessarily need to do that. And as Kingsley mentioned, hello Chad, we did feel that the teacher voice was critical as well, because as we're thinking about systemic equity, the work and the role of teachers sometimes gets pulled in kind of tough ways. So we wanted to invite a few of our teacher leaders to join you, some who are actual in the role of teacher leaders and others who are just leading teachers. So our first teacher voice is Laura, who is one of the members of the Equity Committee.
So I'm Laura Lala, and I teach Spanish at City High. And I grew up here in Iowa City, and I went to Lincoln and Northwest and West. Mr. Shutt was my AP government teacher. So I've seen things here in the district from a student perspective. I've seen them from a teacher's perspective, and lots of different things in between. So I thought I'd just share some thoughts with you here today. So thank you for giving us this time. So I thought I'd talk about something that you've heard of recently, which is implicit bias. And I know some students have talked at school board meetings about implicit bias training. And so it has a lot of different names, implicit bias and conscious bias. Some people might refer to it as prejudice. But whatever name you give it, we all have it. It's not something to be ashamed of. I think more than anything, it's part of human nature. It's a biological instinct, or even you could think of it as a survival mechanism. When babies see a new face for the first time, oftentimes they cry, and that's just our response to new things that are new and different. It's just part of who we are as people. But teachers like myself and everyone else, we all have implicit bias. And so I thought I'd kind of give you an idea of how that might manifest itself in the classroom. With large class sizes, it can be a challenge to get to know all of your students. This year I've had as many as 36 students in one Spanish class. And so we consciously or unconsciously start to make assumptions about our students, because we don't always have as much time as we would like to get to know them on the level that we feel we need. So, for example, we might have a student who sleeps a lot in class, and we say, oh, Xavier, he's just lazy because he always comes and puts his head down in my class. Or we might have another student who's always late or absent to class, like Bianca, and Bianca doesn't care about school, she doesn't care about her education, she has other things she'd rather be doing. But these assumptions that we make about our students affect how we treat them on a daily basis. For example, we might not give the same encouragement to students that we perceive as lazy, right? Students like Xavier, who I mentioned. Or helping a student like Bianca with chronic absenteeism to get the notes they missed. That might not be so high on our priority list because, hey, she's not going to be here tomorrow. What does it matter if I spend the time getting her caught up today? So our actions, or lack thereof, speak just as loudly to our students as what we have to say about the subject that we teach. Our students notice how we treat them, and it affects their perception of us, of school in general. Both Xavier and Bianca that I mentioned are former students of mine, and I'll be the first to admit that my initial assumptions that I made about them were completely wrong. Xavier, it turns out, the reason he was sleeping so much in my class was that he would work until 1 in the morning at Walmart to have enough money to help support his family. Bianca was always late to my first hour, and thankfully she got moved to my third hour, so it wasn't as much of an issue. But Bianca had to watch her younger siblings and help them get to school because her mom worked the late shift and didn't have enough time to get home. So these are the kinds of examples that we encounter, every day in school. And our students are aware of our biases and how we act towards them based on these assumptions. And so how we choose to address the bias in our classrooms and our schools, I think that's going to be part of our district's lasting legacy, and the legacy that our students are going to experience and how they're going to perceive school and what they're motivated to accomplish after they graduate. Teachers, as I have experienced, have a variety of different feelings on the topic of implicit bias. Some teachers completely deny that they have any bias whatsoever. Other teachers feel very much unfairly blamed for some of the disparities that exist in our district. Other teachers just feel kind of overwhelmed with having a large number of Xaviers and Biancas in their classroom, and they don't know how to meet their needs. So we all need to have this conversation about race and education so we can share our different experiences and move forward as a district. We need as teachers to acknowledge that how we see and treat one another differently oftentimes is based on race. And we need to feel empowered to address these types of issues in our classrooms and schools rather than feeling uncomfortable and defensive and sometimes even threatened about the topic of race in education. So as a district, we've started doing some work on this. I think it's a great start, but more is obviously needed. And many of the challenges that we do face as a district arise in part because of implicit bias. And so these challenges are way greater than any one individual. And it's something that we're going to have to work together on. Students, families, teachers, administrators, board members, everyone is going to have to contribute to this discussion. Equity, as you're going to hear, more so here soon, is part of pretty much everything that the district is doing. It's the foundation upon which pretty much everything is built, but oftentimes we don't pay as much attention to it as we should. So the Equity Committee endeavors to take a holistic approach to this work regarding equity and the different challenges facing our district. And so we hope that we can support you as you unpack the strategic plan. And we also want to make sure that teachers have a voice in this work alongside all the other stakeholders as well. To that end, we have asked that some of our cultural competency team leaders, and these are teacher leadership positions, that they speak on behalf of their work as well as an IEC EA representative, so they can help kind of frame the conversation that we'll all be having this afternoon. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks.
Renee? Yeah. So I also have it up here if you need it.
Oh, that would be great.
Might be easier.
All right, I'm Renee Pearson. I teach first grade at Kirkwood Elementary. And I chose to be part of our cultural competency team for the district because Kirkwood, as many of you know, is a very diverse school. And we struggle with how to be better teachers for our very diverse students on a daily basis. And so I wrote up something so I don't talk forever. So our district chose to create the cultural competency team as one of the leadership positions that were implemented this year. Almost every building has a leader for a total of 23 leads. We get together once a month for professional development sessions with the equity director, Kingsley Botchway. And our effort has been focused this year on increasing our knowledge in the area of culturally responsive pedagogy, which basically means that we ensure our teaching practices are appropriate for all of our students. So we talked a little bit about implicit bias, and all of us have that, whether we know a lot about it or not. It does affect what we do on a daily basis, and it affects me and how I treat my 26 kiddos in my classroom, and the lens through which I see the world and see the opportunities and see the curriculum, for that matter, is all based around that. So the primary goal of the team is to empower its members to collaborate with colleagues in their home buildings around the conversation of race, inequity, and inequality. And the work of this team has empowered me to be able to go back to my home school and have conversations about data through the racial lens. So the Iowa City District on average has a 40% achievement gap between our students of color and our white students, based on the percent proficient in math and reading. So because of this discrepancy, obviously it's a serious problem, and work is needed to improve and understand why this is our reality, and how we can create positive change. So at my school, I've been able to help our PLC teams disaggregate data and consider it through the lens of race to determine the discrepancies. And as my work continues with the team, I really hope to be able to further these conversations from our current reality and just leaving it at that and saying, so what, to now what? So we're moving on to saying, now what do we do? We know that we have these discrepancies. We know that they exist in our school and in our teams. So now what do we do? So that's hopefully the work that we can continue doing with the support of the board and the education committee. So any questions about the equity or the cultural competency team at all that I can answer? All right, and I have other fellow members with me here too for support, so.
So you feeling like it's new, obviously, we're
Yeah.
like 6 months into it or
Mhm.
something like that. You feel like you're,
Yeah, I feel very blessed to work at a school that has to face this on a daily basis. And so I feel like that's a good springboard for me to go forward in that team and kind of push that out there as a whole district, because it's not just a Kirkwood issue, it's not just a other school issue that has a lot of this diversity and the challenges that come with that population that you don't understand. And so for me, it's helped me to kind of understand more of what the district looks like as a whole as well, because I don't think that that is the reality for everyone everywhere. And so, but it's something that all of our kids come together in the junior highs, in the high schools. And so I feel like it's been a very good opportunity for us to get together as colleagues across the district and kind of talk about where our realities are at, what we see happening in our schools, and how we can be leaders in our school. And Kingsley's not, having to go to every single school and be there all the time as one person. We can kind of be those ambassadors coming back from our big team or our small team into a bigger school setting. If that makes sense.
sounds good.
Can I pick on you to brag a little
Please.
bit? I'm going to put you on the
Yeah,
spot.
go
So,
ahead.
I had the good fortune of getting to meet with the Kirkwood team last Friday afternoon, along with a few other people. And Anita's done some nice things with some structures in her building. And their teams are really focused on 4 areas. Help me. So it's literacy,
Literacy, and then we have our PLC teams. We have our equity.
equity, social justice,
yep.
and diversity. And
The last one is SIOP and Anyway.
okay.
Yeah.
And so what's really marvelous to hear, and I kind of started my conversation with them as they were wrapping up, that I think one of the hallmark things that this group does is that social justice, equity, diversity piece. And so grade level by grade level by grade level team, they share some really awesome work that's going on, and it's unique, and then teams get to decide on their own, but really to help promote the diversity within the building. Do you want to just share a few examples from what's happening there?
Yeah, so we do morning meetings at Kirkwood, which I don't know if anybody's familiar with morning meetings, part of the responsive classroom. And so basically every morning we devote a good 15-20 minutes to welcoming our kids to the day. So our kids come from lots of different places, from lots of different kinds of mornings. And so we want to center everybody, get everybody in the same place, start on the same page. Everyone gets greeted by name. Everyone around the classroom has the opportunity to engage in an activity of some sort. Sometimes it's a really quick little literacy activity that we might do, or a quick math thing that we do with partners, whatever that looks like. My classroom, we do sharing, and that's a huge part of my kids' day. It's shocking how much they look forward to their sharing days on the calendar. And even as first graders, I mean, as 6 and 7 year olds, they still want to bring whatever they have in their backpack that they might have gotten as a prize the other day, or whatever it is, their new shoes, their old jacket, whatever. They always come up with something to share, and so that's a huge part of our classroom community at our school. And while that cuts into instructional minutes, it ends up giving us more instructional time because we have relationships with our kids, and that's just huge at our school, at every school. I know more about them through their sharing and through their greetings and through their morning stories than I would otherwise. And so that's one huge piece at Kirkwood that we've undertaken and really devoted ourselves to. We also have a ton of clubs and groups. We have a dance club and a drum club and a Lego club, and we've had this amazing basketball club this year, which has been just phenomenal for our kids. They had a tournament on our day that we had professional development. Well, no, it was our work day. It's not professional development day. They came in and did a tournament for the kids and the families. We had more families show up to that than we ever have at conferences, ever. It was amazing, and that's been huge for our building climate and for the kids' excitement about coming to school. Tied with those clubs was agreements that they would be doing their classwork and doing their homework and keeping their behavior in check. So there was some really positive things that were going on with that too. So that's been a huge focus at Kirkwood. And all of our teams that came to the governance team last Friday, maybe not all of them, almost every one of them had disaggregated our reading data by race and by gender to see if we have discrepancies, and if we do, why, and if we don't, why. I was super excited. My classroom showed even results with my kids of color and my Caucasian children with their reading results, which I want to know why. You know, is it because I have a paraeducator supporting me and she happens to be black, and I mean, what is it that happens in our classrooms that gets our kids to where we need them to be? And what can we do to get every classroom to do that? So hopefully this team is going to empower other teachers in other schools to do the same. And it allows me to kind of brag about my school and what we've been doing too, to help that happen elsewhere as well. So, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thanks.
Excellent, thank you. And we also, right here on the own committee, have a teacher that we wanted to invite into the great space and share some perspectives.
Yeah, I'll just quickly share. I teach fourth grade at Longfellow Elementary School, and I've been in the district for about 10 years now. And part of my reason for coming to Iowa City, I'm originally from Boston, was because I wanted to kind of be a role model and support for students of color who go to a school in Iowa City where things can be a little bit difficult for them going through. And I've been a support for those students at Longfellow. Even students who weren't in my classroom, but the parents will reach out to me because they do see a person of color as a resource in the school building, even if it's not their child's classroom teacher. And so I think it's important for families to know that there is diversity among the staff, and to have that access at all levels so that families feel more welcome in the schools. I know that when I first got here, there used to be spaces for teachers of color to kind of meet together to talk through some of the cultural competency work, because it is a little bit different of a slant if you're working with white teachers versus teachers of color. For example, I went to a workshop at the University of Iowa right after Ferguson, and it was a workshop for teachers to say, how do we deal with talking about what's going on in Ferguson in our classrooms? And the big slant of that meeting was, how do I as a white teacher deal with what's going on in Ferguson? And so there's not even necessarily a space for teachers of color to get that sort of support in those kinds of settings that are for all teachers, but really if the majority of teachers were white, then that's going to be kind of the slant of that meeting. So I'm hoping that as we move forward as a district, there are more opportunities for teachers of color to get the kinds of supports that we need, being the only person of color in a building, or having to deal with also seeing that implicit bias from our colleagues, from our administrators, from families, from parents, from students, and just working through how we deal with that. Because I agree with what Alina was saying at Kirkwood. I think coming together, having that collaborative space really does help, have that dialogue move forward into actionable steps for teachers. And I'd like to see more of that for everyone, because I know even working with my colleagues, there is a fear of talking about current events, and there's a fear of responding to students who say you're a racist, or from parents who say you're a racist, and teachers don't know how to respond to that sort of energy at schools. So I think there does need to be more dialogue and more support for teachers, because this is the current climate that we have in Iowa, and it's important that we talk about that as as a district. Otherwise, things will just kind of continue going in the status quo. And as we're seeing with the achievement gaps, we don't want things to keep continuing at status quo. We want to kind of move things forward. And the final point I wanted to make was that there are a lot of teachers who are well-meaning and trying to move forward in the work. And some of the dialogue that I've had with people has shown me that sometimes there really isn't a difference when I'm talking with teachers between disaggregating data by race versus SES. I think that's an important distinction for us to make as a district, even when we're moving forward. I know sometimes when we talk about FRL numbers, people are automatically assuming race, and that's not necessarily the case. So I think more effort needs to be made, from a district level to make sure that we are understanding the differences between SES and how that affects the child's development through school, and then race and how that affects the child's development through school. So I appreciate having the time to just share those few thoughts about where I think we've been forward as a district.
Thanks, Monique. My daughter was in her first year at Longfellow, was in her first class, so I was very excited to be able to work with her again. So the Equity Committee, kind of building off that energy and engagement of the many stakeholders, community members are a strong part of the Equity Committee, and being able to reach out to the community and keep them engaged in the conversation. Lots more to do. These are some of the things you might remember that we shared in March that the committee's been doing, starting with the moral imperative for educational justice and actually articulating that together and kind of continuing to come back to that as we move forward to remember why are we doing this as a group, unpacking the strategic plan being the big kind of work of the committee, and in that figuring out the questions to ask. You're going to see that that's a theme that's coming up. Looking for data. They've done a great job of requesting data, finding out where maybe data doesn't exist, hearing there might be a challenge, and so asking what's the data behind that. There's been a lot of focus on that within the committee, and then once they get that data, to then unpack it. So how do we make sense of this? Do the data we have demonstrate that we have disparities or not? If they don't, what do we need to know about what's really working, and where they do, what do we need to know about what to do about it? So what questions do we ask of the data? And really importantly, that this is a systems level committee. This is a committee for the board of the school board. So the system is really the level of questions that are being asked. And again, I think that's kind of a challenge, is to figure out how do you drive systems change? What does it mean to move a system? What are the questions you ask when the system is the entity you're looking at? So working through that and kind of continuing to learn about that is part of what the Equity Committee is doing and would like to keep doing with you. Reviewing the equity plan for sure. You'll see before we end, I'll just forecast one of the big questions is who's responsible for implementing the equity plan? That's a big question the committee has. It's a question they want to offer to you, is who is responsible for implementing the equity plan? I think the initial response from the committee is we all are, but that's kind of a part of, what is in there and what are we doing, and then how do we monitor that progress back to looking at what is the data. So what we've really got for today is this asking questions piece. And so the committee wanted to share with you that the asking of the right questions is so critical to the work at the systems level, particularly a policy board like the school board. So this is an example. There are several different ways of thinking about the cycle of policy development and implementation and continuous improvement. But here's the idea is we do issue definition in our district. What are the opportunities and what are the problems we want to address? How do we define the issues we want to work on? From there, how do we set the agenda and prioritize what we're going to do? Formulate policies, adopt policies, start to implement the policies, evaluate where we are, and then go back to rethinking about issue definition. Did we get it right? Do we need to change it? And that cycle is the cycle you are engaged in always. So getting that issue definition right up front is really, really key. And I think the Equity Committee is starting to see there are some questions we weren't asking, or we weren't asking in quite the right way. And so that's part of what we want to think about with you. Again, systems level questions, and everything that the committee's trying to work on is informed by the strategic plan. So what we wanted to do is share just really quickly some ways of asking different questions as we've entered into the conversation. One of the real challenges folks face sometimes is we've got kids in our classroom who are struggling, who maybe do come with some experience, who are experiencing school in different ways than those who are successful, who feel the implicit bias when they walk in, who experience microaggressions, whatever it is. There are kids in our classroom, and oftentimes the question is focused on the kids. And I mean, it's a good thing. We don't want to not look at the kids. We do want to think about the systems of supports that we have for kids. But the primary question the Equity Committee is trying to think about is not what's wrong with the kids, but really, what is it about the system? What is it about the system that's leading to these outcomes we don't want? And I sort of say that because you've seen the data, you know what the data is. We'll dig into it a little bit more. But basically, we're getting outcomes we don't want. We've been getting them for a long time. So not what's wrong with the kids, what's wrong with the system.
Can I just say, we're perfectly designed for the results we're delivering, right?
Absolutely.
That's- Right.
Yep, yep. And that's something that's sort of hard. The system is perfectly designed to get the results we're getting.
Right.
It's kind of a hard concept, it's kind of hard, but it is the way it is. We're working really hard and we're continuously getting these results. So what do we need to do differently in our system? Exactly. Another way of thinking about it is, and this is a big one, because we do want to ask the question, how do we do a better job of teaching math? You know, we want to be able to increase student achievement in math. We need to think about the instructional questions about the practice of learning and teaching mathematics. But that's not the only question. And for the Equity Committee, they're putting in front of that, why do we have racial achievement gaps in math? So the question is less about mathematics instruction and more about race. And again, that's a tough conversation. It's a difficult one in our society. We don't have the vocabulary and the opportunities to talk about that enough. So it's really easy to revert to this question. Because we can always get better at math instruction. And certainly we need to. The work of our teacher leaders around mathematics instruction is important. But this is what we have to be able to really, really dig into to change, to get different results than what we've been getting. Another way of thinking about some of the things that are before the Equity Committee, did we hire that principal of color? So, you know, one of our priorities that we've come to you with is diversifying the workforce. And so, yes, we want to know, there was an opening, did you hire that principal of color that seemed like a really, really solid candidate? That's an important question, but that's not the most important question. The most important question is, what are we doing to allow principals of color to thrive in our system? In general, what's the system like? How are our principals of color and our teachers of color and our staff of color experiencing the workplace? What can we do to improve the culture and climate, to improve the inclusivity, to create the spaces to provide the opportunities we need to all of our staff of color? So it's not just the numbers. The numbers matter, that's an indicator, but the real question is, what's the culture and climate? Okay, so the Equity Committee wants to offer some questions to you to ask, and I think we've got maybe about 5 more minutes in our allotted time, so we'll be a little quick about it. We have 3 questions that we'd like to offer up to you. We think these might be questions that would be good for you to use as you're going through your regular business. Maybe they need to be adjusted, and the committee will continue working on that. We'd like to give you some data and have you actually ask these questions. And I don't know if this is totally out of protocol, but I'd like to offer, we have members of the Equity Committee and we have our teacher leaders, cultural competency teacher leaders. We wanted to do little elbow partners for about 2 or 3 minutes looking at some data. I'd like to invite them to come and sit across from you, and maybe we can have pairs of committee members and either Equity Committee or teacher leaders, if that would be okay.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So let me show you what the questions are. What data do we have to monitor progress toward achieving our 3 goals? Are we asking for the right data? And are the data disaggregated? So are the data gonna inform us in the way? And if not, what do we need to do about that? What do our data tell us? Where do we need to focus our efforts? What additional data do we need? And what are we doing to achieve our goals? Who's responsible for that? Oops. I think we decided to leave it right there. Because really, for today, we're kind of asking the questions of the data. So Kingsley sent around a packet that's just got several different pieces of data. And while I'm kind of divvying it up, if I could invite any Equity Committee members and any teacher leaders that would be interested, slide your chair up across from one of our committee members, and we'll divvy up what pieces you get to look at, and then maybe you can share with the group. And Chad, we're going to need you too. So we have in the packet, the bottom, there are some page numbers from the original document, but the big ones that are underlined are for this particular document, so those are the numbers I'm going to refer to. So why don't we just have you guys do culture and climate? It's page 5. This is the recent climate study executive summary. And you can look at these questions. We'll have you all work on, starting on page 7, I need to bring to you my get this going. These are staffing data. And so we've got cut off, so I'll see if you can do that. Ask your questions. Here, why don't you scooch over a little bit? Charlie, you want to scooch down and Chad, you can right here. So Charlie, maybe you can be with Monique and Bill. And you all can look at achievement data on page 11 and 12. And then if you all look at
No, I don't.
If I sit here, am I blocking the screen? Good, 'cause you know what? I don't want to sit over there. Oops.
Yeah.
So we got that. We got get some key themes that might drive action, or there may be some things we need more data. Right? Maybe it's a bit of both. So, but pick a few areas to go deep. Don't ask 10,000 questions and then don't do anything. No action, right?
Right. Awesome. Other comments?
One thing that we talked about when we were looking at the behavior statistics was that something else that we could consider looking at are community reactions to the numbers of suspensions and expulsions and things that we're having. We see with our practices, our modules that we should be doing in the community, or if there's some sort of conflict. And one of that was something that specifically was suspensions for disrespect. To see if they're all thinking the same way in terms of how that's going, or something needs to be looked at differently. So one piece of data we can think about collecting are those parent feedback or something like that from suspensions and expulsions to see if we're thinking the same or if we're thinking different.
Great.
And one thing I brought up is that if you don't have a kind of clearly defined standard of behavior that's looked on equally, it's very subjective. And so if you don't have that baseline that, okay, this is, when you deviate from that, well, then it's going outside, without knowing that standard, it's very subjective as far as any type of data that you're collecting. And then Charlie correctly said, well, then if you look at it and it's racially skewed, well, then you know that there's something wrong with the sample.
Sure. Yeah, great.
Yeah, really been follow-up. I'm very ambivalent about the whole idea of data because partly I think it just masks some questions about just what you want. And data can't tell you what you want. And some people might say, oh, a lot more disrespect citations. That's great because we have a disrespect problem. Other people would say, well, no, wait a minute. Maybe we need to think about what the expectation needs to be. And so I think those are important conversations to have. It's not get drowned out by just looking at numbers. The other problem I have is I don't think we have a very good handle on how to tell whether what we're doing is working. I think sometimes we just look at the number and if it changes from one year to the next, we say, oh, well, it's working, or it's not. Whereas, maybe it's just because it's a different set of fifth graders this year than it was last year. I think there's a lot of different variables going on. And I don't think we take a very scientific approach to figuring out what's causing what, which is a really hard question. And so I think the data can be great for seeing where there's a problem, where there's a need. But I really question whether we have the ability to tell whether what we're doing is working.
And I'll just share that I do believe the equity committee is right there with you with that idea of we need some data to see where we are. We need to ask different questions of it. In just 5 minutes, you went from just data to asking some of these serious, deeper questions about practice and about experience. That is where the committee wants to be going with you. So I think that really is where they want to move with you when we have the time to be able to do it, is uncovering, unpeeling back the onion, digging in, going deeper, asking different questions, thinking about measures, because I think they'll also agree we've got some data, but those aren't the only ones that matter. So I'll just wrap up by saying that the committee wanted to explicitly end with an invitation to do a longer session with you. And I don't know if it's a education committee meeting or if it's a work session or a retreat. That's really for you to decide, but the committee's ready, willing, and able to design it and to be here again like they have been to help dig into those deeper questions and spend a little bit more time. They would be willing to hone what are the few things to look at to get started and that sort of thing. So I think that's the closing invitation that we offer to you. C3E is interested in continuing to support the work as well. We've got other things we'd like to share at another time that we'd like to do as well.
A couple months ago, we talked about maybe doing a work session as part of the education committee in June. So we can talk about agenda setting.
I know there's, the UFO policy suggested that we have a task force. I don't know, can you all follow up? I know I mentioned it before, but I don't know if there's any follow-up with putting that together, gathering people to start working on moving that.
So from a task force standpoint, we really basically need your go-ahead to say that. That's kind of what we ended with, was kind of waiting and on the board to kind of state where we're, if you want us to convene a task force. If so, I need some time. We only have a couple of days left, so to speak, in the school year. And after that, parents and kids scatter. So if you want me to convene that task force, again, so the work can continue in the summer, and then obviously for the next school year, it probably need to be done relatively quickly.
So is that a problem?
Excellent. Why do you need our opinion?
Just because I always wanted to be at that will and pleasure of the board.
Please do it. Go for it.
Everybody agree?
Absolutely, I will be supportive of trying to work out on this. I mean, our kids have come forward and said that they want this addressed on multiple occasions the last couple of months, and teachers as well. And so I think for the best, for our district, I think we need to start working on this now.
I think having a baseline allows us an opportunity to see where we'd like to be. And the task force would have a directive or a goal.
The one thing I will throw out there is that task force and groups getting together will come up with solutions. Those solutions may not necessarily fit your system. People can come up with solutions, you can implement those solutions, and your system will choke it to death. So, just as, it's something I'll throw out at you is that, you all in Kingsley and the group have done a great job of bringing in more people of color. It doesn't mean that they're going to survive. In most cases, you should expect most of them not to survive because it's a systems issue. So when you start getting answers to how to address it through certain actions, the question still is going to come back to the board, which is, what is it that we need to do that will allow the system to accept these solutions versus reject them?
So Kingsley, I think you should walk away empowered. If you think it's right to do, go for it, or just keep us informed. Let's talk on agenda setting. Is everybody conceptually okay with the work session? Education committee in June? Who would be point to work that with? Is it Amy?
Amy, maybe?
Okay, Amy.
We certainly would help.
Or tell us who to work with. I think we want to have a structured agenda. We come the next time when it's very clear what we're doing. In terms of if we're just like an hour and a half, it's, All right, great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, that was fun. I liked it.
Thank you very much. The quicker that's taken away, the better. All right.
Thank you.
Ready to go. Just let me pull something up here.
All right, thank you very much. That was fun. Enjoyed it. Any further discussion on that? Next item on the agenda is science, class science, chart, transfer abundance, and school gardens. Phil, can you take us through it?
Phil's going to take the first part, and I think the other two are come from the board request. So,
okay. And we're probably looking at, can we keep this to 15 minutes? I think we're looking at it by 6. Please go. sorry, Kim, I should ask Lucy to give you the PowerPoint so we can attach it.
I'll get it.
Yeah.
So I'm just sending around a copy of the slides and a couple other handouts I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. My name is Phil Lala. I'm the district science coordinator and teacher at City High. This is my 7th year in the district, first year in this particular role, and I was asked to talk about the elementary science curriculum a little bit tonight. So just 3 things I really wanted to talk about here in the time that I have. Our current elementary science curriculum, how it's changed over the last couple of years, how we build capacity among our teachers, and what's happening with science this upcoming school year. So first thing I wanted to highlight is we get our elementary science curriculum from the VASS Center in Cedar Rapids. The VASS Center stands for Van Allen Science Teaching Center. We sourced a lot of it out of the Iowa City School District a few years ago, and then former coordinator kind of took it up to Grant Wood and created the VASS Center, and now everything comes from there in the kits that they provide. We've been through a little bit of an overhaul of our curriculum here over the course of the last 3 years, and this next school year we're going to have 100% FOSS science kits. FOSS is a research-based science curriculum from the Lawrence Hall of Sciences at Berkeley, and I have a handout there and in your packet that kind of gives a little highlight of what FOSS is all about, some of their goals in creating these kits and what they try to provide teachers. And so this next school year we're going to be at 100% FOSS kits, and a couple of the positives of these things is that there's a lot of continuity from one kit to the next. So as kids go from first grade or kindergarten all the way through 6th grade, there's a lot of continuity in how things are run. There's a lot of continuity from just the fall to the winter to the spring and how they do the investigations and things like that. And so going from a system where we had, I think, 3 different companies where we were getting kits from to one is really going to hopefully help the teachers in how they teach these things, and also the students and how they approach it over the course of their 7 years in elementary school. Like I said, we're going through a little bit of an upgrade here. Starting in the 2014-15 school year, we upgraded our earth science kits. This year we upgraded life science, and next year we're going to upgrade physical science to where everything is aligned with the new next generation science standards. There's a little mistake in here. It says adopted in August of 2016 by the state of Iowa. We adopted it last year in 2015. Next generation has been around for a few years now, but the state of Iowa just adopted them in 2015. And so we've kind of gone through a big upgrade over the course of the last couple of years. I should give a big shout out to Mark Brockmeyer, former science coordinator, who really led a lot of this. And so I'm kind of coming in here towards the end of it, but he really got this up and going. And part of what that means is we worked very closely with the VASS Center to choose the kits that the elementaries are going to have. We've had all of our grade levels pre-implement at different buildings around our district. And what pre-implementing means is basically they get the kit ahead of the entire district. They give feedback to the VASS Center. They create professional development days that they give to people all across eastern Iowa up at the VASS Center. And so we've had a big hand in selecting the different kits and also pre-implementing them and giving PD to different teachers around eastern Iowa. This is what our next school year is going to look like in terms of all the different units that we have. This is obviously kindergarten through 6th grade. We've got earth science all in the fall. We've got physical science all in the winter and life science all in the spring. We really pushed hard to get earth science and life science in the fall and spring because they have a larger outdoor component. And so we've really ran into some issues this year where the VASS Center's been turning over some of their kits. And so a couple of our teachers this year had things like trees and weather during the winter months, and it's obviously hard to go outside and study trees and weather when it's so cold outside. And so next year we have it to where we're going to have earth in the fall and life science in the spring. If you look at this center column, physical science, this is what we're going to have next year being new. And so these were upgraded 2 years ago. This was this year, and then this will be next year, and then all these different kits will be aligned to the next generation science standards. So we are in good shape in that regard. To help build capacity within our elementary schools, at every building there's a science advocate. So we have 20 total science advocates at each building, their responsibilities are to coordinate with the VAS Center, so if there's ever a change in teaching assignments, if somebody ever moves from one grade to a next, if a section is ever added or anything like that, they coordinate with the VAS Center to make sure that we have the right kids coming at the right times. They provide support to teachers in the building, so if there's ever needs to be any sort of registration for PD, if they ever have any questions with the kit, the science advocate's kind of that go-to person, and then they attend monthly meetings with me at the ESC to kind of go over different logistical things, to share how things have been going in their buildings. And we've got a lot of positive feedback from these advocates in terms of the upgrade and also these trainings here. We have trainings for each of the different kits that we provide. All the teachers are trained either in district on one of our TQ days at the beginning of the year, or if they miss something like that, then they'll go up to the VAS Center and actually be trained up there in a full day with the kit. And so when they're trained, they basically go through each of the investigations like students. They have their own notebook that they notebook through. They have focus questions that they do. And so that way they've basically gone through the whole process that the students go through throughout their elementary experience. And so we've got a lot of positive feedback on the trainings. When a teacher comes in, science may not always be their go-to subject, if you will, but with this support, they feel a lot more confident being able to actually teach those. Lastly, this coming up year, we have new report card stems that we created earlier in March with the upgrade with the state science standards and also the upgrade of our kits. We went back and re-looked at the different stems. We got a committee together in March that included teachers from all the different grade levels as well as parents and principals. And so we looked at the different science and engineering practices that is essentially the backbone of the new standards, and we tried to create stems that were appropriate for each of the different grade levels. So when you look at something in kindergarten, it's going to incorporate how they display data maybe in pictures less so than words or things like that. And we kind of tried to build those vertically so that in 6th grade it's more representative of what they do. And so teachers and parents will see new report card stems next year, and then also we'll have the full upgraded implementation K6 this coming year. We're going to start with our first set of trainings on that PD day on August 18th, where teachers are going to have half a day of trainings on their new kits that are coming in the winter, and then we'll have a follow-up day at some point later on in the school year before they get their kits so that they are ready. So that's the quick thing, if you will. So I guess I'll just throw it out to any questions that you guys have.
Just there's a fair bit of change.
Yeah, we've gone through a lot of change, but I think with having so many of the pre-implementers come from within our district, with the area districts that don't necessarily have the capacity that we do, they're coming to the VAS Center and getting all their support from them, whereas we have people in district that we can go to ask for how things are going.
And this is all outcome of the curriculum review like 2 years ago.
We're going through science curriculum review this year where we just finished it up. But because the VAS Center was going through their change, Mark kind of sped up the process for elementary a little bit more ahead of time, just because we wanted to have a say in what they were actually going to be doing and the kits that they were going to be purchasing. So he kind of moved that up for elementary a little bit more.
This year will be more secondary.
Yeah, so this year we focus more on the secondary level.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, could you explain a little bit how the FOSS curriculum ties in with like outdoor gardens and things like that as far as?
Yeah, I've worked with Jennifer from Backdoor Abundance. She's asked about some of the different curriculum that we have. And we have all the different teacher guides and things like that at the ESC. So she's been borrowing those and looking through those to see places where they could be more of an assistance to incorporate some of those things. The nice thing about each of the new upgraded FOSS kits is they all have a section that's kind of outdoor specific. And so it's kind of separate from Backyard Abundance. Teachers have something in their kits that they can do, that they can go outside and work with kids in, whether it be gardens or just something local. And so with that piece and then kind of working with Jennifer, hopefully we have like a good outdoor component to it.
Cool, anything new from us?
Don't think so.
I think Latasha.
Oh, Latasha, I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to ask a little bit about, so from our general progress report, it seems like our kids of color do much better in science than they do reading and math. At least that's what I'm seeing. They seem to be more proficient in science. But it's kind of tricky to me because I'm like, isn't science have a little bit of math and reading? And I don't know if there's a way to collaborate more so that we can pick up from that and be able to help with those other proficiencies, since they seem to be much more proficient in it, and they're doing both of those things in science. And so it's just like, to me, I'm curious about it, I think, of like, how are they doing so much better here, which has the components of these two other things.
So two theories that kind of come to mind quickly. One, it's a very hands-on approach with the FOSS kids, and so we tend to know that improvement can happen when it's hands-on. And then the second thing just to note is that, with the various accommodations that we have to offer or get to offer, with science we can read assessment aloud to them, so there's a component there that's not necessarily there in the other reading tests. So those are just two things that we would think about immediately.
Because I'm just like, can we play off of that some, if that's what our goal is to get all of our kids, I don't know, I'm just thinking about this kind of way that you guys have a transition where it's connected throughout the years. I know math does it, as I'm reading, they all build off, but it seems to be a little bit more effective with this piece, and I guess that's going back to those pieces. But I think it's something that we should really.
And maybe just one other quick thing to add to that is that we know that from the engagement standpoint, the problem-based, project-based learning piece has a large part to do with that. So when you see the work that Matt's doing right now at secondary schools with the makerspaces, how do you tie traditional curriculum to opportunities for students to produce? And we think that engagement component is going to assist with that.
Cool. Might be a great question to take back and just think about it. Super.
Kind of back to the root of Chris's question too, how do we quantify what's working and what's not, right? I mean, the approach to instruction in this one we think is, a big part of that, so trying to tease that out.
Looks exciting. Next time, can we do like a science project or something fun?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Tom.
Further discussion?
Thanks for making this work for your family.
Hey, no problem.
All right, next up is Summer Gymnasium. I think Roseanne, you're going to join us?
Yes.
So we're going to pick this one up?
Well, I thought at the last meeting at Northwest, we were asked for a report. Roseanne graciously came to give us one.
I think it's okay. Thanks, Richard.
Sorry.
Hi.
Hey, how are
I'm
you?
Roseanne Porter. It's really nice to be here. On a positive note, I just like to pass this around. This is sort of like this year we're going to do a summer youth program, and it's being offered by the Iowa City Parks and Recreation. And first of all, before I even tell you about the program, I'd just like to tell you that this whole idea actually came from Henry Harper. Being called to the old Capitol Mall for fights in the schools or something, Henry got with a group of people in the community and was like, we got to do something. We got to find something for these kids to do. And he met with some people with the city school district, juvenile court liaisons, and supervisors. And we were all able to sit down and just come up with what it is that we wanted to do. So we decided to have a summer youth program. And this program is for our at-risk kids, just trying to keep them out of trouble during the summer months. This program is called the 2016 Youth Summer Fun Program. It will begin 1 week after school, June 6th, and go all the way every day, Monday through Friday, all the way to August the 19th. We have programming. We come up with everything we possibly can come up with. Skating, we're making up stuff. Kickboxing, taekwondo. There's nothing that you cannot do this summer. Soccer, volleyball, pool, shooting pool, billiards. We got it. It's in the Parks and Recreation. Everything that we can do in that building, we're offering it. Free swimming classes, softball. All of us gonna teach our kids some softball. Hamza Omar got the kickboxing, taekwondo, and regular boxing under control. We have some Kappa Leagues that's gonna come in and help with wrestling. We have somebody coming in for Computer 101, so it's nothing that these kids cannot get into. Anything that can be done at physical fitness, they got that fitness center, everything. When you come inside the Iowa City Rec Department, you're gonna see everything being utilized. We're gonna use it. We're going out into the community as well, working with Backyard Abundance. I'll be a gardener this summer, first time. We're gonna be taking the kids out to do gardening. We have 2 plots reserved over at Weatherby Park. We're very excited about the program. I've been out talking to, and this whole program was for us to collaborate with every agency here in town to work with us, just saying, hey, free space, we got space for the kids, let's collaborate, let's do this, and this, and it's working out great. I've been to neighborhood centers, talking to Rakisha and Natasha, G World. We got the Dream Center, we got UAY, Big Brothers Big Sisters. We got going over to the teen library, gonna take the kids over there and use their facilities as well. So we're very excited about just trying to keep our kids out of trouble this summer.
Great.
Just how are you staffed now?
How are we staffing?
Yeah, I mean, 4 hours a night, all these different programs.
I have 4 staff up under me.
It's the city of Iowa City.
City of Iowa City.
They came up with
So hopefully maybe later you can give us something that, a little something, maybe some snacks or something to help out. School district, being that we're gonna be, the intention was to use the school gyms, but we ended up really it's Grantwood and the rec center. So we'll use Grantwood on some nights as far as summer league basketballs. So we're very excited about this.
So is this kind of a one-time funding at this point, or is it going to be annual?
They said if it's successful, we'll keep it going. It can go all year round. They just want to see it get kicked off the ground. So I got to make this happen. I think I can.
75 kids, so we need to get the
75. The word is out. Actually,
We'll push it out more.
it went through and it's out in the school newsletter this past Friday, so I was very pleased to see that. So I've been to City High, I've been to West High, they're very excited about it. I've been to Southeast, I've been to Northwest and North Central, so I've been to every school. I've talked about it. A lot of the liaisons in the school are very proud, they're happy, they're signing kids up, they're calling me, hey, can you bring me registration forms? And just, it's free.
Now, is this something we can put in the virtual backpack?
Certainly they have.
Absolutely.
There's a flyer
Sure will.
for it, we can get it out there.
Okay.
Yep.
So kids have to sign up for it, can't just be on a drop-in thing.
Even if they drop in, they can stack. We're not gonna turn them away. They can actually sign in because it's gonna be a very structured program. They're gonna come in, the first day, June 6th, will be a kickoff with the barbecue, having the kids and their parents come in. It's a meet and greet. We want them to get to know one another, and then we would tell them the expectation and the rules and what we will and will not put up with. And if they don't abide by the rules, they won't be a part of what we're trying to do.
You know, I'm curious, it goes from 5 to 9. Is there food?
That's what.
Are they supposed to eat before they go?
That's what we're working on. We're trying to come up with some snacks now. We know we'll have snacks, but we know from that time we will need something. And being that the school district do lunches during the summer, we don't know how we can work that in, but we're willing to take whatever. It's just anything we can possibly.
We should work with Allison on that, because especially if you're at Wood, that's probably something we can work with on.
Okay.
Yeah, from a launch standpoint, when they're in the school.
So this is from 5 to 9 though?
Yeah, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So we're just trying to keep them off the
If
street.
they did sack lunches, could they have them refrigerated till later? Because I know they can do
Let's
sack
talk to
lunches.
Allison, see what we can do.
Okay, that's awesome. Awesome.
Have you approached the city of Coralville at all to see if they would be interested in doing something similar in Coralville?
I have.
And what did they say?
She said she's going to sit down with me. She's very excited about it.
Great. I was going to say, I think Sherry would be very interested.
Yeah, I talked to her, and she just told me to come see her.
Great, thank you. Because they do similar programming throughout the school year at the rec center.
Okay. Yep, I talked to her. I think I done talked to everybody in this town. So, that's what we're doing.
Let us know if we can help with communication or with Steve's talking here, or just political support.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank y'all very much.
Further discussion?
Can I add one thing here, Chris? It's kind of along the same lines. Okay.
Sure.
So, sorry, Roseanne.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Unless you had something else, go ahead.
Okay, I'm
No,
sorry.
there's nothing I was going to ask you. It's just along the same lines. It's just kind of an update to you guys about what we're doing with our summer school program. What we've traditionally done has been more of a punitive approach, where it's been a credit recovery model with junior high students and students as they progress to high school. Joan Vandenberg and our administrators have worked with some junior high staff to really turn it into like a prep program. So we're calling it 7th grade prep program and 9th grade prep program. And so it's going to be more skill and kind of intervention based. So if there's some skills as they progress from 8th grade to 9th grade they aren't necessarily fully honed in on, that they'll be able to address those during the summer. And we're trying to line up some content area teachers, so in the area of language arts or math, that we try to address that. And then similarly for 6th graders moving to 7th grade, that really kind of that how you do school in junior high approach, and doing some of that while also building in some components that it is during the summer and trying to have it be interesting and engaging as well. But we're really trying to flip the model there, rather than just doing credit recovery, sit on a computer, do an APEX course. That we're looking at trying to do something different that'll get them off to a successful start as they enter 7th grade and 9th grade. So just so you kind of have that in the back of your head too, if you're seeing publications out there for a prep program that's coming from the district.
How many kids can do this program?
I was just looking at my flyer. We had 75 students for the.
Is it per school or is it just?
75 for each junior high. Yep.
For each junior high,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
And for those of you who've been around, you'd recognize it, because this is something similar to a program that we used to have. It got cut in one of the rounds of budget cutting several years ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago it got cut. So we're bringing it back.
All right, anything else on summer gymnasium program? All right, agenda 7. First, you want to talk about legislative agenda.
Fill me in first on, I know we had a calendar. Is this the last meeting we had on our calendar?
I believe so.
I think it was, yes.
So now we just gotta think about what we wanna do with this committee in the future.
I think we had June, so we had June on the,
Where's June?
or the ESC, I think. Okay. I would suggest, like you mentioned that we take July and August off. Generally, we don't do a lot of committee work in July. And in August, we're back to school, so third week of August, not great.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'd throw out that we should set the agenda for June, and then in June, we can look at like maybe next year's calendar, but.
I don't see June on here.
No.
I presume because because we meet third week, I think we'd stop with May because we'd be into the summer. So I don't see it on here. I don't have the master sheet with me, but I don't have a draft on here. So I'm presuming that Kim usually builds the draft based on that schedule that I give her, so I'm not seeing it. I don't think we scheduled it.
I know we have one, but we have a parking lot full of items that we wanted to cover. So, does it need to be education committee, could be work session?
Is there a parking lot somewhere that's not here, or where's the parking lot?
I don't know.
I remember seeing a list of items that went into like alphabetized, was it S or Q or R or T?
That was from 2 meetings ago. I think we crossed some of those off the list.
Oh, I do, yeah, I do remember.
Yeah.
that.
Remember when we had AP? It was.
Tonight was probably a good standard, 3 topics you want. I think we can, and we didn't do a panel update, right?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely concerned about how much
reporting
our
hours.
time
I think we checked off all that.
spent listening to presentations instead of actually talking to each other about issues. I would like to reduce that aspect of it dramatically, you know, because we can review materials in advance. You know?
Right.
And I think really we need to do some prioritizing about what we want to do.
Which I think is what happened with the A to B list. I think what we did is we pushed all that information out to you electronically rather than remembering it. So we were just looking at it here. So I think most of those things have already come to you and sometimes attached them in the email.
So what if we plan the June meeting with only one topic, really, to be the next work session? I know we talked school culture and opportunities, but I think it fits in.
I agree.
I think it's one of the same.
Right, I think it should just be included in that conversation.
Yeah.
But what's gonna happen? I mean, are we gonna have a 45-minute long presentation and then we're gonna talk, or are we gonna just go right into talking about stuff?
I think we go right into talking about it.
That's what I think we can do. We can get whatever people want us to read in advance, although I do think it's a good idea not to, it's good for all of that to be efficient.
No, but we're gonna get a handout, let's get it advanced and then ready to go. I mean, I'll work the agenda with Amy or whoever they want, but I think it should be a work session, kind of like we started when we sat together, let's start something like that.
Can I ask a question about the purpose of the education committee?
And that relates too to whether we want to keep going out to distant buildings. Because I really, why are we here tonight? It has nothing to do with that.
It was just the kind of stuff we did on the ESC, but
It usually gives school updates. At least my understanding of the education committee was an opportunity for us to learn more about what's happening in the district. And the presentations that was
Boy,
not-
see, that was not my hope for what it would be. I thought it would be to talk about what we're doing educationally, you know. I don't think it's for us to be educated. I mean, I want to be educated, but I thought the point of the committee was for us to get into the big issues about what's going on.
well, how about this? So in June, we'll just do a work session, and before we have another one in the fall, we'll pull the charter out. Maybe it's in the morning, maybe we should pull all the charter out. Of all the committees, and just decide, we could do it in retreat, or we could do it in 20 years. Maybe sometime between now and the fall, we should review committees.
So, I mean, this committee can be what we want it to be, but again, to reiterate, we had a number of years where the education committee didn't meet. So, the reason for the locations is because the roving locations was essentially that came out of our leadership for student learning talk, our work in the beginning. I think it was leadership for student
I
learning.
just didn't want to see people.
It was to see people, to get into the buildings, to, you know, sometimes people don't feel that they, you know, if they wanted to attend, they couldn't come all the way to they don't come all the way to the ESC. Having opportunities in the neighborhood where folks could come in and ask us questions, and additionally with the facility master plan to target the buildings where work's been done, and we can see. I had hoped to have more opportunity to actually see the good work happening in the buildings, because I don't get a chance to see all the buildings.
I'm not against going out to buildings, but I think we need to know why we're doing it. You know, if it is for people to participate, I don't think we done it before third. If it's for staff, then that's sort of why we're doing it 4:30. But
That's my understanding of it a little bit. At least my, well, I don't know.
So that was why it was a little bit better than
I do like learning things about things that I don't know are going on, but I do agree that having the information ahead to prepare us would be very nice. And then we could focus more on what we need to do as a committee.
I just worry about, for instance, with the equity one, with the teachers were able to speak, it would say, no one label, you just can only get materials and then we're gonna talk about it, and that cuts out their voices. And so, because that would be part of our presentation that we put together. So if we're gonna go to no presentations, reading in advance, we would lose out on hearing from staff and I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, unless you don't want to hear from staff, I mean.
There's only so much, only so many minutes. And I feel like we gotta use them, you know, if we're gonna be a committee, we should be mostly about talking to each other.
So just to summarize, we have one, well, we have minutes, one working topic, equity work session.
Well, what are we gonna do about the chair though?
We can put that on the agenda too.
I mean, if we put that on the June agenda, then we just do it all over again in September. I mean,
Probably, well, I mean, that's why I didn't put it on this one, is. Let's talk, we're gonna talk committees, under the vacancy, we're gonna talk committee structure, just what we're gonna do in the short term, and we'll send that conversation. Because, yeah, I mean, we're kind of at the point where we do an annual renewal anyway. And it'd be nice to know the second board member,
Yep.
you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should do anything permanently, but,
Anything else on agenda setting? Rating, anything?
As we think about what items we want on the agenda, I'd like to see us be more choosy in the future about what we put on the agenda. I do appreciate at the last meeting that we chose things that could go out by memo instead of being on our agenda. So I'd like to see more of that.
follow up on that. I mean, it's important to me that the committee be setting the agenda. Because it seems like sometimes other things are getting put on there that in addition to what, you know, we listen to, and it ends up taking up a big part of the meeting. And, you know, I mean, I'm just feeling like scarce. You know, I know the last meeting went very late, but nobody really wants that either.
And with that, entertain motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.